Seriously? Snow? It's freaking cold out here.
You should have thought of that before you chose this door.
You're insufferable. I can't even...
You're welcome.
All right, well, I guess we're doing this out here. So, let's talk about how the Stanley Parable deals with some other miscellaneous issues. There's actually an ending you can get by sneaking out of a window. There's no reason to expect you can do it, and it's hard to even get up to it, but when you move through it, there's no glass, and you fall out of the map. Come to think of it, could I have just escaped through a window instead of going through the doors you put in front of me? Haha! I found a loophole.
One you can't exploit anymore. There are no windows outdoors.
Anyway, you fall into a white space, much like you might expect to see when you glitch out of a map in a video game. But the narrator, of course, knows that you did this and begins waxing poetic about using glitches to break the game.
At first, Stanley assumed he'd broken the map, until he heard this narration and realized it was part of the game's design all along. He then praised the game for its insightful and witty commentary into the nature of video game structure and its examination of structural narrative tropes.
The entire experience has been completely derailed, and ultimately you just kind of end up stuck in here until you reset the game. The narrator even breaks the fourth wall even further by talking about the game's commentary, doing essentially the same thing you do by trying to find glitches to exploit, breaking immersion and bringing attention to the game's larger context as a video game. With the same snark as always, the game seems to be criticizing the mindset that leads to seeking out such glitches, or at least questioning its value. Finding glitches in video games can be pretty fun, but it could also be argued that it's one of the less valuable and productive things a gamer could be doing with their time. I'm not entirely sure I'd argue that personally, but I can definitely see where the game is coming from. Glitches can be pretty enjoyable to find sometimes, but the only thing gained from seeking them out is a good laugh. It does actually get in the way of both the authorial intent and your emergent experience as the player. It certainly has less overall value to a person than many other gaming activities. For that matter, there's something of a problematic subculture of literary criticism right now that focuses almost entirely on the glitches and the goofs, that judges a movie or a game or what have you based entirely on the cumulative number of mistakes rather than the overall value and quality of what's being presented, and that is pretty problematic. I'm not sure whether the Stanley Parable is intentionally pointing that out here, but it definitely seems to be taking issue with the practice of seeking out glitches just for the lulz.
Speaking of, when will you be doing your episode about all of your screw-ups?
I'll get to that eventually.
Like when you said charity was immoral in objectivism.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was kind of an...
Or the mistakes you made with the lore of Gears of War.
Yes, I will get to it. Jeez, you're more annoying than YouTube commenters. Think about that for a second. YouTube commenters!
You must have really good commenters.
Okay, well, yeah, actually, my YouTube commenters are pretty great, but that still doesn't... whatever. Another interesting bit of the game is the heaven ending, which is probably only really there as a joke. It's really silly, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can't get anything interesting out of it. In this ending, the player presses the action button on 5 different computers over the course of multiple playthroughs, and when they activate all 5, they appear in a white room with large buttons circling around them and a choir chanting to push them. So, yeah, that's really weird, and yes, that is that entire ending. It just stays like that until you eventually reset the game yourself and start it all over again. But it's one of a few points in the game, some of which we've already talked about, that emphasize just how pointless it is to have a whole ton of stuff to do, plenty of buttons to push, when none of it actually has any particularly meaningful context or consequence. This ending is played for laughs, but it's inevitable that the player will get bored and restart the game themselves. They're surrounded by things to do, but none of them actually mean anything.
So it's like if the Stanley Parable was made by Bethesda.
Yeah, maybe, but let's refrain from insulting games that my viewers like. Or the internet as a whole, actually. That can turn out pretty poorly. This could certainly be taken a couple different ways, but I think this is the most likely interpretation. I'm sure we've all played at least a few games that have a lot of stuff to do, but it's all kind of empty and meaningless. Just having a whole bunch of stuff to be done doesn't necessarily make a game a worthwhile experience. That stuff has to have some level of meaning. There's also an ending that has Stanley trapped in a never-ending loop of a few rooms while the narrator goes through his thought process as he kind of loses his mind. Interestingly enough, Stanley's insanity in this segment is portrayed by his awareness of the situation becoming more and more meta. He recognizes the narrator's voice in his head. He changes the game in subtle ways because he realizes he can. The route ends with Stanley's body being found on the sidewalk, having gone completely mad and dropped dead. The significant thing to note in this ending is that as Stanley more and more confuses his surreal situation with his own actual perception and experience, the more he loses his mind. The game is making a statement about the importance of the ability to distinguish fantasy from reality, and the damage that can come from failing to do so. Then, the stuff that happens after you go through the blue door in one of the routes actually has a whole ton of little things it talks about, from self-absorbed pretentiousness on the narrator's part, to the narrator's role in giving the player a level of direction, to the tendency of developers to mold their games towards what they think their players want, and the simplicity of art games, and...
Something troubling you?
Yeah, it just... So much of this game seems to be saying that one particular approach to the interaction between the narrator and the player is the right one, but all of this extra little stuff seems to make it a little more complex than that.
Oh? Figuring that out now, are we?
Shut up. There's gotta be a central theme, a clear message the game is trying to get across. You don't even... Hold on. You've been leading me here, haven't you? I mean, not here, well, not just here, physically, but to this line of thinking. There's something I need to figure out.
Impressive. Nothing gets past you.
Snark aside, you've been leading me to a conclusion. And I think, maybe, this game isn't saying which approach is right, is it? It's not espousing either one. It's like you said, it's an exploration of interactive storytelling. It's not trying to tell us that any one thing is right or wrong. It's not trying to tell us how to tell an interactive story. It's just showing us the various approaches of interactive storytelling and the strengths and pitfalls of each one. The central theme of the Stanley parable is interactive storytelling as a whole, not any one way to go about it.
Finally.